Hi guys, welcome back. We're going to do section 5.3b today. So yesterday you already did part A. I broke it up in two sections. Today is the second method. So there are three methods to solving a linear system, which is just a fancy word for two equations basically. Okay, so yesterday the first method was graphing. Today the second method is going to be substitution. Everything's going to be involving substituting. So taking one thing here and substituting it for there. And taking something here and substituting it over here. And then tomorrow for section 5.4, you'll learn how to do the last method, which is going to be elimination. Elimination is my favorite one, but some people really like substitution as well. Most people hate the graphing one, but I always teach that one first because you need to know all three. So today, though, it's all going to be about substitution. So if you weren't happy with the graphing from yesterday, no more graphing today. Okay, you survived the graphing. So for this one is really good when you have something like y equals or x equals. When you have y equals and everything pushed to the other side, or x equals and everything pushed to the other side, it's a good one for substitution because all this stuff is equal to y. Y is the same thing as 3x plus 2. So we're going to get rid of the y here, and we're going to substitute that in for y. Since y is equal to 3x plus 2, we can get rid of the y and substitute or replace it with 3x plus 2. So watch what happens, okay? I'm going to write this problem out. But when I get to the y, I'm going to stop. So I've got x plus 2y equals 11. All I did was I wrote this equation out, the second equation, and I wrote it out longer, and where the y was, I left a blank. What do you think is going to go into that blank spot? Well, we took out a y, so we have to substitute something that's equal to y. And all this is equal to y, so instead of putting a y there, we're going to put the 3x plus 2 there. And we put it in parentheses, and I'll show you why in a second, but we put it in parentheses so that we do the distributive property, okay? So now what you're going to do is going to be the same steps every time. Once you've substituted, you've made the problem easier. Even though it looks like a longer problem, notice instead of having two letters, an x and a y, now we only have one letter. We only have x. This is going to make it really easy to figure out what x is versus trying to find out what x is when there's another letter involved would be kind of difficult. So this way we can find out what x is because we only have to worry about one letter at a time. So once you get to this point, it's the same steps every time. So the first step is to distribute, okay? So we're going to do 2 times 3x and 2 times 2. Okay, so this x is not being touched. X plus, we did not touch any of that. 2 times 3x, that's just 6x, plus 2 times 2 is 4. So now we got rid of the parentheses by distributing the 2 through. And we still have the equals 11. We didn't touch that at all, so we're just going to bring that straight down. Now we don't have parentheses. So now the next step is going to be combine like terms. What looks like it would go together? This x and this x, they're both an x. X goes with x and it stays in x. We learned that in part A of this class as well. Now, if there's not a number in front, you're right. It's an automatic imaginary 1. So what is 1x plus 6x? 1 plus 6 is 7x's. We still have the plus 4, and we still have the equals 11. That didn't change. Okay? Now we're still trying to get x by itself, but at this point you should know how to do these. These are a simple 2-step problem. We spent a lot of time in part A on these. So it's the blue step and the red step if you remember right. So the blue step is to get rid of the plus 4. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides. 7x equals, what's 11 take away 4? 11 take away 4 is also 7. And now the last step is to get rid of the 7 in front of the x. How do we get rid of that? We divide. So we're going to divide by 7, divide by 7. These go away. And 7 divided by 7 is 1. Okay? Hopefully you can see that. So our x is 1. But remember, we need an X and a Y to find out where they cross. Remember from the last section, we had a line, we had another line, and what was the answer? It was where they crossed. So we need another number. Now, don't worry, the other number is super easy to get, okay? You're just going to use substitution again, and that's why this method is called substitution. So you're going to take that 1, and you're going to replace it with the X here and make that a 1, okay? So, dropped my marker, sorry. We're going to take this 1 and we're going to put it right there where the X is. Okay, so I'm going to scooch it up a little bit. So, Y is going to equal, and we're trying to find out what Y equals. We're going to do 3X, but we're going to substitute the X plus 2. So notice all I did was write 3X plus 2, but instead of the X, I left a blank. What's going to go in that blank? The 1 from down here. Okay, so we found X was 1. So this 1 is going to go all the way up and put right there. And then just figure out what that is. You can do this in your head or you can type it into your calculator. If you type it into your calculator, it'll do it for you. But what's 3 times 1? That's just 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. So we have a 1 and a 5. Remember, your answer is both numbers. So you need the X and then the Y. The 1 was the X and the 5 was the Y. So our answer is 1, 5. That is where they would cross. Now, if you don't like this method and you prefer the graphing method, which that does happen, you can totally do the graphing method. You would graph this first equation in one of your colors. You would graph the second equation in one of your colors. And where would they cross? Guess what? They're going to cross at 1, 5. But this method allows you to do it without even having to draw a graph, okay? And I know this looks like a lot here, but it's the same steps every time. It's like learning a dance. It's hard at first, but once you learn it, you'll know the steps. And once you learn the steps, it's the same steps repeated over and over, okay? So it might take you a minute. You might have to watch this video a few times, rewind, go back, repeat what I said. Maybe there's something you didn't hear and that's causing you confusion, and keep doing it. But once you learn the steps, I promise you it'll be super easy, and once you get it, you got it, and you won't forget it. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next example. Give me a second and I will have that up for you. Okay, so now we're on to example 4 for section 5.3. And so we are still dealing with the substitution. Okay, sorry. Still dealing with the substitution. So this one is not going to be as easy because you'll notice that it's not X equals or Y equals. Neither of them are ready to go. So it might not be the best method to use substitution. Maybe it's better to use elimination, which you'll learn tomorrow, or maybe it's better to graph. But for right now, we're only doing substitution for this section, so we're going to use substitution to solve it. So let's say, even though it's not really set up for substitution, you really, really want to use substitution. How would you do that? Well, you're going to try to make one of them X equals or Y equals. So what I notice is X is really close to being by itself. If I could just get rid of this Y here, I would have X by itself. I would have X equals. Okay, well, how do you get rid of a minus 2Y? You would add 2Y and add 2Y. These would go away, and now you would have X equals negative 6 plus 2Y. So instead of having that, you would just have that, and now you have now you have X by itself. So now you can substitute for X because you know what X is. So you're going to write the second equation, but where the X is, that's where you're going to leave the blank, okay? Because we know what X is equal to. So 4X, leave a blank, plus 6Y equals 4. Okay, and it's going to be the same steps as before. What's going to go in that blank? It's going to be what X was equal to. And X was equal to negative 6 plus 2Y. So you're going to fill in that blank with negative 6 plus 2Y. Now what happens, you'll notice, is that you have nothing but Y's. Instead of 2 letters to deal with, you only have 1 letter to deal with, and you'll be able to find out what Y is. Okay, and your answer, don't forget, is always X, Y. Okay, so we're going to find the y first. So, same steps as before. You're going to distribute. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24, and 4 times 2y is a positive 8y. 4 times 2. Everything else stays the same. Plus 6y equals 4. And you'll notice now I only have the letter y, which makes it a lot easier to do this problem. You're going to combine your like terms. So after you do the distributive property, you always combine your like terms second. It's the same steps every time. Once you learn these steps, you'll be good. If it helps, you might want to write down the steps. Distributive property is the first step. Combining like terms is the second step. So you might want to pause the video and go ahead and write those steps down so you remember. So now we're going to combine our like terms. So negative 24 I didn't deal with, but I've got 8 plus 6. 8 plus 6 is positive 14y. Equals, and then the 4 I didn't change. The next step is to get your y by itself. So it's always the adding and subtracting thing. So how do you get rid of a minus 24? The opposite would be add 24 to both sides. You get 14y equals, what's 4 plus 24? 4 plus 24 is 28. And now the very last step, you should know this, it's just a simple two-step problem at this point. You divide by 14, divide by 14. 28 divided by 14 is 2. We found y. Now it's very important, even though you found y first, where does y go in our answer? It goes second. Okay, so it's always x comma y. Okay, so we're going to get rid of our y and we're going to put in a 2. Okay, but we need to know what x is. So now we need to go back and find out what x is. Now, don't freak out. I know that this is a lot of stuff. The last part is the easiest part. Okay, whoops. So you already have x equals. So go back to the one that's x equals because you're trying to find x. And where the y is, you're going to put a 2. So this y becomes a 2. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean by that. Negative 6 plus 2y, but instead of a y, you put a parenthesis. And what goes in that parenthesis? The 2, because y is equal to 2. Now you're just going to do negative 6, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? So what is negative 6? Move it so you can see it. Negative 6 plus 4. Negative 6 plus 4 is you borrow $6 and you only pay back 4. Okay? So you still owe me $2. Okay? So you're going to come over here and you're going to erase the x because you found x. X is equal to negative 2, and you're going to put that there. And now you've found where they cross. They cross at negative 2, positive 2. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to do a couple checkpoints and kind of just pause the video as you need to. Once you feel good and confident with the checkpoints, then you'll be able to go do the worksheet for 5.3 Part B. Okay, so now we're on checkpoint number 1. And if you guys understand that, I think we'll be good for the day. So, and you should be able to do your section 5.3B worksheet. Okay, so this one is, you're going to probably want to pause it at this point and jot this down. Try it on your own, and then come back, play the video, and kind of walk through it as I go through it and double check your answers. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So for this one, it's a really, really good one to use substitution because we have y equals. Anytime you have y equals or x equals, it's a good time for substitution. So y is equal to all of this, so we're going to put it there where y is. Okay, so we're going to rewrite the second equation, 3x plus y equals 10. Okay, you'll notice I just left a big blank where the y was. And what do you think is going to go in that blank? You're going to replace the y with 2x plus 5 because that's what it's equal to. Now, normally, Normally at this point, you would do the distributive property. That is the first step. However, is there a number out in front? No. Okay, if there was a 2 here, we'd multiply both things by 2. If there was a 3 here, we'd multiply both things by 3. But it's a negative, it's like an imaginary 1, okay? Do we really need to multiply everything by 1? Is multiplying by 1 going to change the 2 or the 5? No, it's still going to be 2 or 5. So we can actually skip that step, but normally that would be the step. Okay, so here we actually do not need the parentheses because we don't need to do the distributive property. Because if we multiply by 1, we're still going to have 2 and we're still going to have 5. So now at this point, you can just combine your like terms. So you've got 3x plus 2x, that's 5x's, plus 5 equals 10. We didn't change that. Get rid of your plus 5 by subtracting 5. 5x equals 10. Take away 5 is also 5. And how do we get rid of the 5 out in front? We divide by 5. Lots of 5s. 5 divided by 5 is 1. Okay, now remember your answer is x comma y. So, we'll do it right here. X comma y. Turn it so you can see it. So we already found that x down here is equal to 1. So we're going to get rid of our x and we're going to replace it or substitute it with 1. But we don't know where y is. So we have to take the 1 and put it back up here. And since this is y equals, if we replace that with a 1, and I put a 1 in the parenthesis, you might have to rewrite that. Now you should be able to tell me what the y is. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 5 is 7. So now you can come over here and erase your y and put in your 7. Okay, so once you do the hard steps and you find this, don't get frustrated. I see a lot of students just give up at this point and they don't get the other part of their answer. They only get the one part, okay? Make sure you come back and you substitute it in because that's super easy. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 5 more is 7, and that gets you the other part of your answer, okay? So, hopefully that makes sense. And, yeah, at this point, you probably are ready for section 5.3 part B's worksheets. If you're not, go back and watch the video again until it makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. I hope to see you tomorrow.